What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. In this video we're going to be switching out the hardware on the Braum seats for the 370Z. So let's jump right into it. So the reason I'm switching out the hardware is because I was using M6 bolts for the seats, well, at least for the bottom part, which mounts the rails to the bracket itself, and I should have been using these instead, which are M8s. To mount up the rails to the bracket, you need to make sure that you're using M8. M6 was way too small. I'll show you why. So when you have an M8 bolt and you put it through this hole, it pretty much fills up the entire gap, as where when you use an M6 bolt, you put it through, it still has a gap and it's able to move freely, which is something you don't want. You want to make sure it's tight. So that's why we're switching it out. That's what was happening with the seats. I had a hole pretty much this size, and this M8 bolt is able to fit directly through it. So let's go to start switching it out. I'll show you guys how to mount up the rails as well. That way you guys have an idea of how it goes. Here's the equipment that I'm going to be using to install the actual bracket to the rails. So you have a bigger washer along with a smaller one. The smaller one will go on to the bottom portion of the bolt, and this top one is going to go along with the nut, which is this one right here. This is a sort of locking nut, so it grabs onto the washer, that way it doesn't move. So as you can see here, it has a little grooves in it. Alright, so here are the seats. The seat is facing down currently. That way I have enough leverage to pretty much work with it. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be putting the rail with the string facing towards the legs, or where your legs would go. And then here's the back. So you want the string facing down, because if you do it the opposite way, instead of being able to push the bracket that goes in here, instead of pushing it down, you would have to push it up. So I prefer pushing it down and then being able to slide back and forth, so like that, and that's how you're able to pretty much move it. You could also push this here and then you're able to move it as well. That's completely up to you, but here is how it is mounted. To be able to get access to the bolts, you push it down and then you have access to this bolt right here. And then with the bottom, same thing as well. You push it down and then you move it up to get access to the bolt that's right here. So we're going to go ahead and do this side. Once we do this side, I'll show you guys how I mount it up. And that way you guys kind of have an idea of how it goes. There's a few ways you can put this bracket in. You can either do it how I did it, which was I just put it in there after I mounted these and then pull it in and allow it to sit in there. Or you can do it with the bracket off still. Then you put it in place and then you push it in and then you can put the bolt in there. It's completely up to you. I think this part is easier, but it is harder to do it just because you need a little bit of strength to be able to bend this, because this thing's pretty strong. So once you do that, you should be good. And then when mounting up the bolts here at the top, make sure that they're loose. That way when you're mounting up the bottom one and the top one, they align perfectly. You're able to get the bolts in, and then you can place it in and then tighten it. So make sure both bolts are in before you start tightening anything, and you leave this a little bit loose, that way you're able to mount it. Now to install this bracket over here, you need to make sure that the rails are aligned perfectly. You can always play with it a little bit just to get the bolt in, and you want to measure where you pretty much want it. So what I do is I grab the rail, I place it on here, and then I pretty much see where the holes mount up properly. So as you can see, this one is not matching up correctly. So if we move it a little bit more, see how now it's lining up. So that gives us a better idea of which bolt we need to use, but you also need to check the bottom. The bottom also has to line up. So once you have all the holes lined up, you know exactly where it needs to go. So this is exactly where it needs to be. So the bottom hole, sorry, I'm using my toe to hold it, so don't worry about my toe, just don't look at it. So yeah, so you have this one right here. It's mounting up properly right there. And then you have this one over here as well. That's right on the spot where the hole's at. And then you have this top one over here as well that's mounted up, or we're going to mount up. But yeah, go ahead and start putting in the holes. I usually start from the top, and then you have to do the same thing, move the rail up to get access to the hole, and that's how you mount up the hardware onto it. If your rail comes with a seat bracket or a belt bracket like this one does right here, you kind of want to give it enough space to be able to install it. So if you push it too far this way, you're not going to have enough space. So you need to make sure that you use the other holes that are on the bracket to be able to mount it up. That way you have enough space to use the seat belt. The Braum seats actually has a location for the belts on the side, which is over here. I think it's this side. Yep, it's right there. So once you lift up this thing, there's a bolt right there. There's a location for your seat belt. But I'm going to use the one from the rails. Alright, so here are all of the bolts mounted up. Now, when you're installing it, make sure the same thing with the rails, that you don't tighten these until you actually have all four of them on there. Just because if you tighten them in one area, you're not going to be able to maneuver it or move it around. That way you can fit in the other bolts. So leave them loose, and then once you have all four bolts on there, you can go ahead and start tightening it up. But yeah, here's how they all look. And then let me show you the other side. That way you can kind of see how it's mounted. Now there's that one right there. So these are hex screws. That's how it's mounted. And this one as well is mounted right there. Now all the hardware is on, seat brackets are put on, everything's tightened up. So the reason I did this was because someone was actually supposed to trade me seats. I was gonna get some red Braum seats, the same material as these but just in red. It would look a lot better with the Z since it has some like red accents on it. But he never came through. I took him off, that way we could trade. We already made a deal, but the guy that he was going to buy the seats from to trade with me for the black ones ended up selling it for somebody else for more. So I thought I just took the opportunity to switch out the hardware, put in the right hardware. That way I don't have any issues in the future. This is mainly just to go over the rails, how to do that, just because in the previous video I didn't actually do that part because it was already installed, so there was no reason for me to take it off. But yeah, thank you guys for watching, and if you guys have any questions, please let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.